Well, for example, what I am very interested, for example, when I do a documentary. When I don't know if you know the movie From the East. Well, I did that documentary and I was shooting and I didn't know what I was doing in a way. I was shooting, then I was editing, and then when I saw the film finished, I understood that in a way the station or the people waiting online for me were an evocation of another time, of the war. You know, really the station were like the war, and the people waiting online, they could be waiting online to go to the gas chamber or something. So it does evokes 1991 or 92, because you already see some clothes, not many, who were a little bit more from westernized. Most of them were not yet. And those clothes could make you think of the 50s. But you feel that there are already some little changes, and still it evokes in your imagination the war, for me. You know, of course, I'm someone obsessed by that, and probably someone else would have gone in Moscow and would have shot something else, you know, and would not have captured. And I understood when I had finished the film that those images, in a way, were already in my mind, and that unconsciously I was looking for them, you know. So it's 1992, it's 1950, it's 1943, and when I did a movie called South, about the south of the States, there was a subject matter who appeared little by little about James Byrd Jr., a black guy who was killed in a obnoxious way by 3 white supremacists. But then you see 3 shots of trees, just trees. How can you not think of people hanging there? So you see trees, and then it evocates other time when the black were lynched there, you know. So it's never just what you see. That's what I'm interested when I'm doing a documentary, so-called documentary. And so it's really time and space and history. I didn't do that to do something against it, you know. I did those long shots because I think that cinema is about space and time, all right, mostly. And the way cinema was mostly done, it was to escape time, all right? When people were saying, oh, I had a good evening, I didn't see the time passing by. Well, they were robbed 2 hours of their life. And I want the people to feel the time passing by. I think it's very important. And also, then they can really see, you know. And then also, I respect them. You know, it's in a way ethical. Yeah. Well, I didn't decide it. In fact, it's a kind of hazard. There was a man called Michael Tarantino. He died, unfortunately. And he knew my work, my cinema work. And he said to me once, you know, your work is influencing a lot of artists. I don't know how, but anyway. I would love you to do an installation. Then a few years later, he convinced Cathy Albrecht, who at the time was at Boston, to ask me to do one. And I even didn't know what was an installation. So she came to see me in Paris, and I said, fine, if I can make a movie. And that was from the East. And she said, okay, and I thought she was going to look for the money, but took forever. I find the money myself to do from the East. And then 2 years later, she said, I find the money to do the installation. And then I said, my God, what I'm going to do, I will never see an installation. And again, that was also nice. I was with my usual editor, Claire Atherton, and I said, okay, let's have 3 TV. Why I decide 3, I don't know. Because 2, it plays against each other, and 3, it's opening. And let's have the VHS thing, and okay, start the first one. And then I say, after a few minutes, start the same tape. Huh? We had 3 times the same tape. Start this one, and a few minutes. And then we start to look. And suddenly I took her arm and said, look, it's working. And she pushed her, chronometer. And I said, after a while, it's not working anymore. So she said, it was working for 4 minutes. So we decide to try to find other 4 minutes, and we change again and we find out 8 times 4 minutes, so 24 monitors. And the 25th was something very different and special, but and then I wanted to have the film turning. So it happened like that, and then people start to ask more, and I had so much pleasure doing it. It's so much lighter than to do a film, that I don't do many of them, but I was surprised yesterday that the people were staying long. I was happy about it, because usually they just pass by. So it starts to maybe change in the gallery too. They understand that there is something to see, not just to pass by. Even in the opening, which is the worst moment. Because in the other room, they were just talking to each other and drinking beer. And because unfortunately, in a way, the most daring film can be seen anywhere else than in gallery or museum. And I say it's unfortunate because the art world, in a way, it's not a democratic world. There is 10,000 people who are going to Swiss, to Miami, and then to there, and it's the same world. And cinema, even if only 2,000 people go to see a movie, it's still democratic in a way. It doesn't belong to those powerful, rich, or well-educated, or whatever world. It's a strange world. It's like the same people go to Venice. First they go to Basel, then they go to Miami Fair, and then they go, I don't know, and the same group of people. I think that there are not more than 10,000. And what's funny, when I was in Venice one with a little piece I did there, a lot of Americans went, and we were at the Hotel Excelsior, and so we had to take the boat, and it was beautiful. But they were invited to the American embassy or some anyway, it was in the Lido. And mostly they were dentists and I don't know what, who had money, and who were looking, they were shoppers, If you go to Bergdorf, it's one of the most beautiful galleries in the world. And it's the same thing, they are shoppers. I know that some people really do appreciate, but and understand, because it's hard not to have a a view about an advice, you know. I think that so many people did things that, and they are well known, and I said, poof, I don't get it. That's in a way what people are thinking, but I was not thinking of that. I was just putting things together visually and emotionally, who I think will work. And I wanted to make one part who was like, for me, a landscape. And from that landscape, I took a little element and I screened it big on the other wall. And that for me was the portrait. And I liked the idea that the portrait was so huge and black and white and make you think of silent movie, you know. And that all the other things were small and large. And yes, you can think that you can, well, it brings out some imagination, I suppose, in the viewer. But I did that already in a movie called Whole Night, with little sequences, but it was much more narrative in a way, very, very minimal narrative, like a point of crisis. And you could really imagine there what happened before, and it was even a question. Here, you can dream a bit of who are they and what they do and do they know each other and whatever and what they do together and what. But it's much more minimal than Toute une Nuit, who was already minimal at the time, but here in a way it's freer. And I really play with the emotion between two images, and then a third one, and then a fourth one, and then the fifth one, and I had no plan to edit it. It was by testing it, by trying it. And that I like when there is no plan. Otherwise, when there is a plan, it's boring, and then you just do the plan. And in fact, it came that Yann Fabre asked me to do something for him. He wanted just a movie, because all the people who are there are his dancer and people he work with. And I said to him, you know, you will have dance on the stage, you will have musician on the stage, you will have, I don't know, it will be full. So a whole big image won't work, can work, but I propose to make a little line with 3 images. And I did it, and it was like 1 hour long. It had to be as long as the play, in a way. Enfin, it was not a play, I don't know. It's his work. The images were mine, and I wanted to do something else, because for him the thing was he wanted something more, in a way, provocative. And I didn't want, I am not, it's not that I'm not interested by provocation, but if I provoke, it's totally unconscious. For him, it's very conscious. And I took all the image. I didn't use all the image I used for his film, and his film was black and white only. And I really tried to work, you know, with the material, in a way composing images. I cannot say like a painter, because it's moving paint. It's and I hate when people say, "Oh, well, your shot looks like painting," and I don't think that cinema should look like painting, but because it's another media, and then it looks statified sometime, but you know, from, let's say, a line like that in the image in black and white, I want a body like that. And so it was like a composition each time, all the time. So, yeah, that's all I can say. And then what was nice is the way we were working really in my place in Paris. I had a projector. It was too small on the computer, so we were projecting the image on my wall, and we were really seeing the things building by itself on that wall. And it was a fascinating process, you see. Because usually it's like, it would have been, you know, on the computer. It was like that, I could see. I loved it to work. And in fact, in a way, that's what they were doing at the beginning of the cinema. They were editing on the screen, you know. And that's what I did in a way. Because I think that, well, yes, you can think of stories, but when I saw it, it makes me think of many moments of cinema. I didn't do it on purpose again, but you know, it's like from the 1910 to the 70s, you know. And at the end, let's say at the end of the 70s. The end of the 70s was like a turning point for the cinema. It was more, getting more, how can I say, less freer. Because I said, why don't we call it moving? And then because I was speaking so much about time and space, they had that, because moving, they thought it was strange. And it's a bigger, they show there the installation from the east, the installation from the other side, the new piece, and the film about the south, and the film in Israel. You have seen it là-bas. I shot it from the apartment I was renting a lot, day and night, and the shutters were closed, and I shot some shots from the sea also, but mostly in a way is the relation of a second generation Jew after the Holocaust, which means, well, my mother was in Auschwitz, and asking herself questions about what she feels, which is me, what she feels about Israel, and how it's complicated, and how it's complicated just to survive as a second generation child. And I was saying that for me, taking the bus was more heroic than making a movie, because it's true that I have a complicated relation with the everyday life. It's like, in a way, very hard for me to face it, every gesture. And what is my place? Where is my place? And but nothing was real. And yes, of course, when I was there, there was a suicide bomber who killed people who were just like 10 meters away from my apartment. I didn't know because I was sleeping. So many feelings enter into that. But it's more someone from Europe, second generation, coming to Israel, trying to do something and trying to feel her situation in the world, in a way. Because what people expect when you do a film about Israel is to say how bad everything is there, you know. And the European loves it. They love it. And I have a very good friend, Amos, not guitar, I can't stand him, but oh, I forgot it. And he's a very nice man. And he is suffering because what he sees in Israel is only what's going on wrong. And he put that on films. And then he goes to Cannes, and all the so-called leftists are, because they are so happy to see that they are bad thing in Israel. But that's not only it, you know. And I wouldn't allow myself to do anything like that because, you know, I didn't take the risk to live there. Well, I'm in Paris, in a nice apartment, and among Arabs. I mean, in my neighborhood, it's only Arabs almost and black people. I get away very well with them, and it's nice. But I'm not going to be killed. And it's not because I can be killed that I'm not in Israel, but and I love to go there because there is, especially in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, it's very lively. Right now it's like a little New York, but it's also there what's the worst of the American capitalism, and it's like I went there the first time in '61. And at the time you enter, as I was a child, we went by boat. It was an incredible moment because it was the end of the Algerian War. And so I was really a little girl, and one day I wake up, I went on the deck. And it was like the immigrant from Charlie Chaplin. They had made a detour to go to Constantine, I think, Philippeville, I think. To save some Jews who were considered like French, and they were all on the deck with white jalaba and red hands, and they looked like Arabs, and they were probably, taking care of cattle or something like that. They were not like from a city. And me, as a child, I never saw Jews like that, It was so beautiful. It was like those people from another world and from another time, totally, And I said to my mother, those are Jews. And she said, yeah. And they were religious, and they were singing. They were doing the prayer, but it was not the same prayer than the Ashkenazim. Because I spent my time when I was a little child with my grandfather who was religious. And I was going every day to the synagogue. And I loved the songs, of the prayer. I'm not religious, but... And my parents, when my grandfather died, they abandoned everything, For them, it was heavy. Anyway, I didn't recognize the song, so it was another world. And those people, when we arrived in Israel, they were touching the ground, and it was such a primitive thing to do for me, I didn't get it totally. But that's not what I wanted to say. It's when you enter at that time in a supermarket, there was one kind of cheese, one kind of soap, one kind of, and it was, in a way, still puritanical, because still the spirit of the kibbutzim. And I liked it. I really loved it, and I'm very sorry. Well, I can say I'm sorry, but I'm living. Well, I never enter in a supermarket in Paris. I hate it. But no, almost nobody had a car. Someone who had a car was helping everyone else, was driving there and there. It was like a miracle to have a car. And no. It's pure capitalism, like the worst capitalism here, and they want to be like Americans. And a lot of kids, that's why, they don't. Why go to the army? Not only because of they don't like what the army does, but there is not that kind of sense that it's a country that we have to build. No, it's money, money, money. That's why, in a way, the religious are so strong, because, in a way, it is hateful to see that. And when you go to Hong Kong or to Shanghai, it's even worse. What you see in Shanghai, for example, I shot two buildings were enormous buildings, where they screen, it was like at night, things, and let's say with very bad music. Let's say Chopin, totally destroyed, and then American music destroyed, and there is no. And then you see Mona Lisa, and then a little duck on a dessin animé. So the culture doesn't exist. It's all the same. It's all leveled. Has no history. It's frightening. So the image, really, the images are like, those two things are like totem. The images are part of a kind of idolatry. Exactly, why God, or I don't know, someone said you should make images and not make idolatric images. And I think, that's why I think, we are on the verge of something. I don't know, I'm afraid. I don't want to say, because I will look like that it's the end of the world, but that it's the end of a certain world, that's for sure. And now in 30 years they will put some nano thing in your brain to make you a specialist in science or a specialist in whatever they need. Clean the room, and so in a way the essence of the human being will be lost. In a way that's not exactly what did interest me more in Proust. Well, I love him. But since I was like 26, 27, I thought that La Prisonnière, it's really a movie, a book for me. Most of it is interior and relation in an apartment with two people and obsession. Okay. And finally, when I heard that Paolo Branco was producing Le Temps Retrouvé, a year later I met him in a cafe. I said, I want to do La Prisonnière, and he said, fine. But I cut out so much. I went really to the bones of the. It's really a free adaptation, I would say. But it was great to do it. It's one of the films I really like in terms of the fiction I did lately. It's so difficult to make a movie who works. And in a way, this one, when I finish it, and I look at it and I say, it worked. How come I made it work? I had no idea, But it was, something was like, some film you do very well, you do everything you should, and had no grace. Why? That's why, before you start a movie, it's frightening. Well, I wrote an enormous script with Deborah, but I don't know, it's very expensive. It takes place in China, in Siberia, in Paris. Very expensive. I don't know if we are going to succeed to make it. And I rewrite a lot, and I'm always suspicious when I'm rewriting too much. So, I don't know, we'll see. I will do whatever I can to make it work, but not more than that. I won't push it too much, because I have some doubts. So maybe something else will come out of it, or, you never work for nothing. Sometimes you don't know. Well, for example, I made an adaptation of an Isaac Bashevis singer, 2 books, Never Find the Money. 8 years later, I did something called Histoire d'Amérique. And in a way, it was much more interesting than to make a period piece, And so, that, it was like Ghost. It was like they were coming from the past. And also what I liked in that film, it's like they were speaking from things which were happening in 1910, 1912, 1942, 1945, up to 50. And they were still on the same level. And that's why it's... And also, you feel that it was some ghost coming back of a lost culture, of an almost lost culture. Yeah. And also I like the fact that it was mixed with humor, because when people have tragic life, they need humor, And so in a way, it was my way of doing something about Singer.